गुरुर्ब्रह्मा गुरुर्विष्णुः गुरुर्देवो महेश्वरः गुरुः साक्षात् परब्रह्म तस्मै श्रीगुरवे नमः। अखण्डमण्डलाकारं व्याप्तं येन चराचरं तत्पदं दर्शितं येन तस्मै श्रीगुरवे नमः। सहनाववतु सहनौ भुनक्तु सह वीर्यं करवावहै तेजस्विनावधीतमस्तु मा विद्विषावहै। ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्तिः। Namaskaram to all and welcome to the next session of the Bharatiya Darshana Shastravali series. Today, on the occasion of Guru Purnima, I offer my pranams to all the Gurus of the universe. This day, in this series, today we have a lecture on the cosmological view and the concept of Triguna in the Indian philosophy through the Sankhya Darshana. And to take us through this session, we have a great speaker with us, Dr. Madhusudan Pennaji. Dr. Madhusudan ji, welcome to the Shastravali series. Dr. Madhusudan Pennaji is a Dean, Faculty of Indian Religion, Philosophy and Culture at the Kavikula Guru Kalidas Sanskrit University in Nagpur. He was awarded the honorary D.Litt by the National Sanskrit University, Tirupati. He has been decked with several awards, prestigious awards like the Somnath Trust Gold Medal, Pandit Satavlekar Award, and many, many more. He has more than 30 books and 35 articles to his credit. This includes 2 Mahakavyas. One of these, Prajna Chakshusham, was actually awarded the Sahitya Academy Award in 2019. We are so happy to have you, Pennaji, for this lecture today. So over to you, Dr. Madhusudan Pennaji.
Dhanyavadaha. So thank you all. Ya Devi Bodha Rupena Mad Buddhim Adhitastushi Sada Mam Prerayed Vacha Taya Tameva Samstuve Asmat Gurubhyo Namaha Harihi Om. Swagatam. I welcome all the participants here who would like to know about the Sankhya. And the Sankhya philosophy is very old. I'll be talking on the cosmology in general and the Sankhya view of Triguna and cosmology in particular. So I think some of you may have the basic knowledge of Sankhya philosophy, but still I would like to share a view of cosmology and the concept of Triguna. First, we should understand the word cosmology. We know that it is cosmos. Cosmos is all existing matter and space. This considered as a whole is the cosmos, or in other languages also you have similar words, Vishwam in Sanskrit, cosmos, universe, world, whatever it is. And it is the scientific study of the origin, evolution, and eventual fate of the universe. So it's very interesting. In the Upanishads, even in the original Vedic Samhita Granthas also, we find several discussions, several hymns devoted for this. It's actually, it interests everybody. What is this universe? What is its origin? And what is its destiny? And why we are in this universe as a part of this? And are we really goaded by somebody? Is there any other force that actually drives us? Or we responsible for own deeds and the result of the deeds? So all these questions do pester a thinking mind. So this universe, its origin, evolution, and the eventual fate, does it have any creation? Does it have any dissolution? So all these questions actually are of significant importance in this cosmology, in the darshana also, because all the Indian philosophical systems deal with these srushti krama, and pralaya, types of pralaya. So all these are the subject matter of our Indian philosophy also. And according to modern science, it is believed that the universe is at least 10 billion light years in diameter, the cosmos, and it contains a vast number of galaxies. And the universe has been expanding since its creation in the Big Bang, because this Big Bang theory has been the most accepted theory, because there was other theory also, steady state universe theory, but this has been uh, accepted by many scholars, many scientists also, about 13 billion years ago. So this is the cosmology. And in this, now the universe has been expanding. This is actually Max Planck who proposed this theory. The universe was not static because it was believed before him also that the universe was static. But Max Planck has simply discarded theory, he has proved on the basis of what Hubble had proved. Hubble, it had discovered that the distant galaxies, they actually change their color. On the basis of the color of the galaxies, it was surmised that the galaxies are actually moving faster. And because of that, Max Planck, because he has uh, established a theory and he has given a constant for that, so he stated that this universe is expanding, and it actually supported the theory of Big Bang. So it has led the scientists to believe in the Big Bang theory that the universe must have born from a Big Bang. And for that, he has given a theory, the constant, that is Max Planck constant. And you can understand here that the energy of each packet, actually quantum is the energy that is measured in joules. So that energy is nothing but the Planck's constant and the velocity, speed of light. So both, if these two are multiplied and you get the energy. So this was the theory proposed by Max Planck, and it was actually discovered by Edwin Hubble. He discovered that so actually the galaxies are moving faster, like 72 kilometer speed per second, 72 kilometer per second speed. So they are moving faster, and wherever you are, it's actually the galaxy is moving away from this earth, and that is the speed he has calculated. And for that, after that, it was long thought the gravity of matter in the universe was certain to slow the expansion of the universe, because the matter is spread in the universe, and the gravity of matter also has some effect or influence on the expansion of the universe. And then Friedman, later in 1920s, he determined the speed of expansion exactly. So that comes very close to the Planck's constant. And now we come to the Sankhya. So when we try to understand the universe, its evolution and the purpose, because the physical analysis of the universe is different from metaphysical analysis of it. Because physically, we may define matter, universe, cosmos, creation, and all these. Of course, the elements, etc., have no sense at all nowadays. But in this background, if we try to understand the Sankhya, so we find several theories proposed by Kapila Maharshi, Ishwara Krishna, and earlier Sankhya thinkers also. So, from the gross to the subtle, this is actually the way to get to the cause of the universe. The purpose is, of course, not easily known. Now, The Sankhya, as given in the Yoga Bhashya, the Sankhya philosophy is actually starts with the specific property of all the matter. So the matter as it is presented to our senses is actually in the form of the waves that strike our eyes, and the signals are carried to the brain waves. It's actually cerebral cortex. So the energy in a waveform, there is of course a debate whether it is wave or particle, and that's why somebody suggested that it is wavicle. It's a combination of both because it demonstrates the characteristics of wave sometimes and particle also sometimes, and therefore you cannot have a final theory regarding this, but energy is real and it actually reaches our eyes. That means the optic nerves, and through that the energy gets carried to the cerebral cortex, and there it is recorded. And these actually, all the signals, the electric, mild electric charges, everything is nothing but energy. And this energy presents itself in the form of matter, and the same energy presents itself in the form of mind and the perceiver. And all this experience during our life is just drik and drishya, the seen and the seer. So there is something participating in the process of creation, and there is something which is understood or realized or grasped as creation. So that's why some scientist says that actually we are the player in the game and we are being played also. And in this process, we understand that the specific property. So here we have all the Vishesha. The Vishesha in Sankhya philosophy means the particulars, specific properties. And these actually are the gross. From these, if we try to get into the true nature, because this is actually the Tao of everything, and the Tao of universe, the Tao of Sankhya, how to get to that? So from the specific property, if you start getting into the subtle nature of the nature, then you get on to the all these uh, things like specific property first. Then there is generic property. It is actually common property. And here, the common, like genesis or class, that comes in here. And then we have the tanmatra. Tanmatra are actually the subtle form of matter. And the tanmatra, like smell, taste, form, touch. So these are sound, these are the tanmatra. And again, if we peep into the nature of this tanmatra, we find actually tanmatra nothing but the guna. Guna, we will discuss later. The guna are actually the forces, the natural forces, which are functioning for a purpose. And that purposiveness is actually the core of all this Sankhya philosophy. That is, the Sankhya philosophy says, even the Yoga's philosophy follows that, that the entire creation is for the sake of the Purusha, Purushasya darshanartham, kaivalyartham pradhanasya. That's what the Sankhya philosophy says. So ultimately, it is the purposiveness, and the science may come to the point of guna, but it cannot understand the purposiveness. That's why somewhere Will Durant also said very uh, uh, relevantly that the philosophy and science, they had different directions earlier, but now a point has come where they have to converge. Because if science takes care of how part of the subject, then the philosophy should take care of why. Because science does not bother about the question why, but now the philosophy will have to support it, and both should go together. So this is the purposiveness. Purposiveness is nothing but why the entire creation should take place. Why? And Sankhya philosophy believes that it is for the sake of the consciousness called Purusha, self, the individual self. And we will see the nature of this self also. So all this is why and how it is presented to our senses. starting from the specific property. So when we observe the universe, so actually, as Stephen Hawking said, I look at the universe in geographical proportion. Similarly, the Sankhya looks at the universe as modification of the gunas, and the grossest modification of the guna are nothing but the specific property. What are the specific property? You see, when we see something, it is the form, it is the size, it is the touch of that particular object that the eyes pass on to the brain. And when we touch something, we feel whether it is soft or hard, whether it is hot or cold. So all these are the sensations. These are the sensations, and these actually are passed on to the brain. So it starts with this specific property. So when I get something in my hand, I feel it. Suppose it is a mango fruit. So first thing that comes to my understanding is specific property of that. This is a mango. Its color is this. Its smell is this. Its taste is this. Everything that comes to my mind. So these are the specific properties of an object. And then we understand the generic properties, like the class. It belongs to the class of a fruit and mango fruit. And there also we have different classes. And then we understand that. And within, from these, when we get to the tanmatra, so there in that particular object only, we have all these. These are nothing but the atoms arranged differently. So it is, after all, the bombardment of the atoms that creates an impression in the brain that there is something outside also. But modern science and even our Vedanta and one school of the Buddhism, they don't believe in the absolute reality of the external things, because external thing is exactly what the senses and the brain tell us to believe. So we believe that. But external world is only a creation of mind. This is the theory that has been widely accepted even in science. And in this process, we understand how the Sankhya philosophy explains the universe. The first thing we have to understand that to the Sankhya thinker, the universe is a modification. Modification is nothing but when the previous characteristics leave an object and new characteristics appear in that. So the change in the characteristics itself is modification. This is known as parinama. And parinama, you find in the Yoga Sutra also, three kinds of minds parinama, three kinds of bhutendriya parinama we study there. That means everything in the universe is undergoing some modification. Even the senses, the matter outside, inside, everything is going through some modification. Modification in the sense they had actually possessed some characteristics, and in course of time, some of these characteristics will be lost and new characteristics, new properties will appear. So this particular shifting of characteristics is known as modification. Then what is this universe? It is a modification. Modification of what? Modification of the prime forces known as guna. Actually, guna are the prime forces. These are the fundamental forces according to the Sankhya. And out of these only, everything has been manifested as modification. So in this process, we understand that on one side you have in blue that circle, Prakriti. It's actually the primordial force. This is known as nature. And this Prakriti is nothing but the three forces in a particular state. So in modern science also, if you want to know about nucleus, what is it exactly? Nothing but what the protons and neutrons make, actually nucleons, and the electrons, they actually make an orbit. So this is nucleus. And similarly here also, the three forces, they form something called Prakriti. But mind you, this word Prakriti etymologically means that which makes itself, that which modifies something, prakaroti. And in this sense, it's actually a state. And the Sankhya philosophers want us to actually get to that particular state of origin. It is actually the origin of all modification, all creation, all universe. So they want to believe that before all this manifestation, when everything was exactly not created, then what was that particular state? Sankhya philosophers say it was Prakriti. And that Prakriti, that is equilibrium of all the three forces. They are in the complete balance, not dominating each other. And this is Mula Prakriti. Mulasya amulatvad, amulam moolam. This is what Sankhya Sutra also says. So that particular primordial cause of the universe, that is not a product because it is the absolute. It is not a product. But it being inert, it cannot function and modify on its own. So there is, of course, participation of a conscious energy. And that particular conscious energy is shown in this second circle, Purusha. That is consciousness, or generally loosely termed as spirit. So this consciousness, when it comes in contact with the matter, or when there is a participation between these two, the purpose is also given in the Sankhya Darshana why the Prakriti should get to the Purusha, because Purusha in the Sankhya philosophy is devoid of any action. Because on his own, Purusha, though the pronoun he, she is meaningless here, that Purusha, the energy, it cannot function on its own. And Prakriti also, though there is action, it cannot function on its own. So therefore, the Prakriti, which is the substratum of the action, it moves closer to the Purusha for its own sake. And then there is the participation, Prakriti Purusha Sanyogaha. And from this, now in the beginning, when there was nothing in the sense, nothing that could be termed as something, because everything was dormant and unmanifested. In that particular state, Prakriti was real, Purusha had the participation, and the immediate evolute of that was Mahat. And please understand that this is actually this evolution process is exactly not something that must have taken place sometime back. Every time this is taking place, even when the child is in mother's womb, like a fetus, so there also actually everything is taking place from zygote, from mitosis to the formation of embryo, and finally coming out of the womb. So all this is a designed process, and in that, the immediate evolute of this combination is cosmic intellect. This is actually a collective term given to all the intellects. Later, individuality has taken place, but before that, it was only cosmic intellect. And from that, the individual ego or the ego principle that has taken place, that is known as ahankara. If Mahat is the collective term given to the intellect in general, then ahankara is the separate ego. Individual selves, they come here. And this actually Mahadadya Prakriti Vikriteha Sapta, Mahat, then Ahankara, then Tanmatra. So these are the Prakriti Vikriti. Na Prakritir, na Vikritif Puman. So when it comes to the consciousness, Sankhya philosophy says there is some entity in the universe known as Purusha or energy that is neither born nor that which creates further. So it is neither a creator nor the created. So that is the nature of this Purusha energy. But Prakriti, which is also, of course, energy, but it has the potentiality to create. So all the creation is a result of this Prakriti with the participation of this Purusha. This is what the Sankhya Darshana explains to us. And in this process, Sankhya philosophy says that it is a modification. We, of course, remember two major theories regarding the universe. That steady state theory, the universe is always expanding, but maintaining a constant average density, with matter being continuously created to form new stars and galaxies. So this is exactly what modern science says, that new matter is being created, because the old matter, of course, decays, it disappears, sometimes into a black hole. But again it comes out, because the recent theory says when something has disappeared even into the black hole, after some time you find somewhere in the universe again appearing. So if it has disappeared in a particular place or space, part of the universe, don't think that it has disappeared altogether, but somewhere in the universe it again appears. This is the new theory. So this way, the old ones are simply modified. Again, new matter is being created, and but the universe as such is static. So this actually supported by our Jayanta Narlikar and ancient Indian philosophical systems, that Mimamsa system especially supported this theory that Nahi Kadachit Anidrisham Jagat. It says that the world does never cease to exist because it is a continuous process and it doesn't have any dissolution at all, no pralayam at all. That's exactly. But now the most accepted theory is the Big Bang theory. And in this, a cosmological model of the observable universe from the earliest known periods through the subsequent large scale evolution. And this model describes how the universe expanded from initial state of very high density and high temperature. So actually, uh, this is actually the theory of singularity, that when the universe was in a state of very high density and high temperature, that is absolute energy, without any divisions, without any conditions, without even space-time continuum, because it was later creation, they believe. So in that particular state, the singularity, because modern science says that there was only singularity, and 10 to the power of minus 43 or 44 seconds, there was initial vibration within that, and that kind of a kind of impetus that has actually led to the explosion in the form of Big Bang. And again, within the short duration of 1 second, within that only 10 to the power of minus 14 seconds, 15 seconds, there was a kind of activity. And as a result, after 3 seconds, there was the nucleon formation. Then there was activity within the nucleosynthesis. And after maybe 600 billion years, the solid matter got formed, and the solid matter in the form of all galaxies, etc., that has appeared. So this is Big Bang theory. And in this process, we come to the Prakriti of Sankhya, which actually gets closer to the nucleus, because here Sankhya thinkers want us to understand the origin of the universe in the form of this Prakriti. That first we find the proposition and the premises. There is Prakriti, Karanamasti Avyaktam. This is actually the proposition, Pratigna Vakya. And everything else is only the premises that they support, because Bhedanam Parimanat, Samanvayat, Shaktitah, Pravruttescha, Karanakarya Vibhagat, Avibhagat, Vaishwarupyasya, Karanamastya Avyaktam. So this way, all these are given as reasoning to believe in the existence of a particular primordial cause of the universe. They say, see, you observe in the universe finitude of diversity. The universe is diverse, but everything is limited. So the finitude, the parichinnata, so that gives scope for the inference of a particular cause behind. And you find in this diversity also sameness and coordination, that is samanvaya. And all the cause, they possess some potentiality, like the mango seed or any other seed. It possesses that particular potentiality to modify further in the same manner. So from that seed, we get a sprout of that same class, and it operates. And there is distinction between the cause and the effect, and there is continuity in diversity. So all these are taken as the reasoning to take us to the existence of a primordial cause in the form of Prakriti. So on the basis of this reasoning, we are supposed to believe that there is a cause, otherwise this would have not taken place. Had there been no fire, there would have not been any smoke. So this is the tarka. And the same tarka or logic applies here. See, on the basis of the known, on the basis of the manifested, on the basis of the finitude, we try to understand something beyond which is subtle, maybe imperceivable, like the Nayayikas do. Kshityankuradikam sakartrikam karyatvat. So from karya, they want us to take to the cause. And the Agama Pramana, on the contrary, wants to take us from the cause to the effect. It says you believe in the cause and you understand the effect. But all these other, these are the Yukti Prasthana, these are the Yukti Darshana, so they depend more on the reasoning. And they try to convince everybody that from the effect only you can get to the cause. This is Sheshavat Anumana. And in this process, we come to the Prakriti, and Karanamasti Avyaktam, it said. That means there is some Avyakta. Avyakta is the general term used for Prakriti. Other word is Pradhana. There is Mula Prakriti, Pradhana, Prakriti. Actually, they all mean one. That is the first prime cause. And how does it function? Trigunataha. It functions on the guna force. That means through the three gunas only the Prakriti functions. Samudayacha, of course, collectively, because no guna can function separately, independently. That we'll see in the next slide also. That all the three guna, they function in a very coordinated manner. Collectively they function. And through its modification, the Prakriti functions. And it is like water. It says, it's a general observation that when we taste the water of different places, the water tastes different. Sometimes the water tastes sweet, sometimes sour, like that, salty. Why? It depends on the soil. Because the water is coming from the soil, it actually carries some characteristic of that. So therefore, the water tastes differently. Similarly, the Prakriti functions like water. It actually gets to that particular adjunct and accordingly it manifests, like the trees, birds, insects, humans, and other. So all these are only different modifications, but depending on that particular adjunct, the Prakriti is understood differently. And the Prakriti, that means, can you define, can you give the characteristics of this particular Prakriti? How is that? What is it exactly? But unfortunately, Sankhya Darshana is rather silent. That particular part is not dealt with. But in Yoga Bhashya, Vyasa Maharshi has given a thought to that. And he says, this Prakriti is devoid of existence and non-existence. That means you cannot say, there is no apparatus to exactly convince somebody that Prakriti exists or Prakriti does not exist. In this particular state of equilibrium, though the three gunas are there, because the activity is not yet started, you cannot differentiate among the guna. So therefore, what happens? You are not certain. Your mind does not grasp. Of course, our senses, our mind, both are actually tuned. So that's why they can get only limited knowledge of the universe, and there is no question of getting complete knowledge of the universe anytime. That's what Eddington also stated in one of his essays, that even the greatest scientist on earth can never get a clear idea of the universe. Completely not possible. So here also, when the Sankhya is pointing to that Prakriti in its own form can never be termed as existent or non-existent. But its astitva, its existence is to be inferred by its effect. That means from the effect only we have to infer. That's why always they use inference for this Prakriti. And the Brahma Sutra also refute this Sankhya Darshana, saying Nanumanikam apyekeshamiti. Nanumanikam, Anumanikam apyekeshamiti chet na. So all these are there. Shrute, Ikshaterna Shabdam. So all these say that the Prakriti is inferable and you cannot directly know the Prakriti, neither real or unreal. It is beyond. Because real, unreal, they are actually relative terms. Generally, we call something as real only when it serves some purpose. And in its original state, when the Prakriti does not serve any purpose at all, in that particular state of equilibrium, you cannot term it as real. But later, after the Kshobha, the Prathama Kshobha, Guna Kshobha, when the Prakriti manifests, you cannot term it as unreal also. So therefore, it is now pertinent here that the Prakriti is neither real nor unreal, but it is unmanifest. As such, it is unmanifest, because as long as there is this equilibrium, it is the Prakriti inferable only, and all its effects can be perceived, grasped, understood. So that cause is unmanifest and it cannot trace to any other thing, because if it is a product, then it can indicate something else. Just as the ego, the intellect, they actually give scope for inference of some other thing because they are produced. But because the Prakriti is not produced, it does not leave scope for further inference of some other thing. So therefore, it is not any trace, and it is the ultimate principle. Ultimate principle in the sense, it is not any evolute of any other cause. And in this particular Prakriti, we find three: Sattva, Rajas, Tamas. Sattva is the initial vibration, Rajas is the mobility or the action, and Tamas is inertia. So it is actually the blocking agent. So these three forces together function in the form of the universe. And in this process, we come to the singularity theory after understanding the Prakriti. The universe was extremely dense and hot, and the interactions between particles were governed by a single force. And this single force, when 10 to the power of minus 43 seconds, that particular one, because the time and space were not created. Time and space were yet to be created, and in that particular one, it was single force. And in other words, now in the modern sense, we have four fundamental forces, starting with the strong nuclear force, electromagnetic force, weak nuclear, and gravitation, the weakest of these. They merge into one. And this is exactly now the modern science's unified field theory. And similarly, all the three, Sattva, Rajas, Tamas, when they were in equilibrium, in the state of equilibrium, it was unified field. Actually, it was the single force called Prakriti, the singularity. And the guna, the forces, how do they function? Here you understand and appreciate Anyonya Abhibhava Ashraya Janana Midhuna Vrittayascha Gunaha. So when Sankhya philosophers try to expound on these, so it's very clear that all these forces, they depend on each other, they influence each other, they, of course, produce in the sense actually function and coagulate with each other. So that's why you cannot separate any of these from the other. So this is a kind of bond that it cannot be separated. And all the three guna, they function in this manner. Then you can question that in that particular state, how to understand that this is sattva, this is rajas, this is tamas. Then always from the effect only, we can understand the cause. So this is actually karyanumeyaha, that is phalanumeyaha prarambhaha. So the same sentence of Kalidasa applies here, that from karya you understand the karana, and if there is no karya, understand that there is only equilibrium. That means the three guna are in dormant state That means they do not function in their own capacity. So all these forces like the neutron, electron, proton. See, the electron, of course, negatively charged and proton positively charged, and without charge, the neutron, but they actually combine to get further into the form of matter. So all the matter, if it is to be believed that all the matter electromagnetic, and these electromagnetic waves of different wavelengths and shape, mass, whatever it is. So all this is nothing but from the uh, atoms. And further, if we get into the atoms, we find the nucleus and electron, proton, neutron. Electrons, of course, orbiting with all the quarks. And then within that, we find the quantum. That's what Einstein has given the word. And quantum is nothing but energy in the form of packet, energy packet. And further, if we get into the nature of this, then we find only the fields like electromagnetic. These are the fields or the waves, and therefore all matter is reduced into these electromagnetic waves. So that's why it is from these that the universe is manifested, and all the gunas, they function in this manner. And in this process, we try to understand in brief from the strongest to the weakest. If we go, the strong nuclear force is actually between subatomic particles of the matter, and these actually bind the quarks together, 6 and 6, 12. So they are bound together by these and in clusters. Further, familiar subatomic particles are created like protons and neutrons, the nucleons. And this particular force is responsible for the creation of protons and neutrons. And there is, of course, the electromagnetic force. Before it was thought as different electric and magnetic, but later it was combined. And this is actually responsible for stationary and moving charged particles. Because they interact with each other, and this is the force that actually propels them. And there is weak nuclear force, and especially when things have to fall apart, this plays a greater role. And gravitational force is the weakest of all, but very typically, this is the strongest force again. And this is the force that decides how much an object should weigh, that how much weight should be there. So that depends on the gravitational force. And the gunas, they actually are the three forces. And we understand from the effect, if it is laghu, priti, prakasha, sukha, all positive, pleasure, happiness, lightness in the body and mind, everything, then you understand it is sattva functioning. And if it is activity, restlessness, and tiredness, apriti, displeasure, gloom, everything, that leads to the inference of rajas. And tamas, this particular guna, the force, is responsible for a kind of heaviness in body, mind, everything, and it actually conceals our understanding. Therefore, we fall into a kind of delusion. That means a kind of ignorance, and it is heaviness. Therefore, vishada, sadness, sorrow, depression, and all negativity, niyama, moha. But this force is required. There is also a kind of force like life. So life and death, these are the two forces that actually regulate everything. So death is a force, though appears to be negative, is very positive. That's why Kalidasa says, Maranam Prakritihi Sharirinam. So this is very positive, and actually Tamoguna, this controls everything. Otherwise, if Rajas is more dominant, then everything will be produced and the production will be continuing. So there should be something to control. For example, when the zygote is multiplying, when there is multiplication of cells in the body like mitosis, then in that particular moment, if the tamoguna does not restrain, then if the cells go on multiplying, then what happens? It will be a kind of cancer. So there is some force inside that actually regulates and stops that there. So that's of course according to the DNA, the chromosomes, but that particular one is regulated, and the regulating force is the tamas, a very positive but understood to be negative. And in this process, the consciousness and matter come together to form the universe. And this matter is nothing but sattva, rajas, and tamas. And from these, the collective ego is formed. From this, the individuality called self, jivatma, they are there. And from these, tanmatra and senses. The tanmatra actually energy packets, and senses are also energy, but receivers. These are the receptors, and tanmatra are the received. So this is the grand design in the universe, that there is something created as the bhoga, matter of enjoyment, and there is another thing created as the source of enjoyment. So we see something, so through the eyes we see that, and immediately our previous impressions get raked up, and we accordingly evaluate the particular object as beautiful or not, as good or not, as pleasant or not, and accordingly we dispose ourselves. And this disposition is nothing but an effect of our previous impressions called vasana. So yoga philosophy deals more with the vasana, how to, like Yoga Vasishta, how to curb them, how to channelize them, how to totally transform them. So from Ashubha Vasana to Shubha Vasana, and further Chittavritti Nirodha, all this is the subject matter of yoga. But the Sankhya says that the tanmatra and senses, they lead to impressions, and from this the material world is created. And in this manner, now some time is left here for a discussion on all these matters. And we understand that the cosmology and the guna, what is this relation between the two? Because Sankhya philosophy believes that all the universe is a creation or modification of these triguna. We should understand these triguna in their own nature, and how they modify themselves, and we should understand the participation of the self, the pure energy called Purusha, and ultimately we should also understand why all this game is being played, why all this, the universe and myself, why this participation. Because we sometimes look into ourselves and try to understand why all this, why I have to take a body, get into that as if forced by somebody, and helplessly I lead some life, and death comes, that inevitable hour comes, and death keeps its icy hands on the heads of kings and rustics alike. So death comes, and I leave the body. Again, I come back, say the Shastra. So why all this? So Sankhya Darshana says it is all for the spiritual evolution, not material evolution. Charles Darwin, if he has talked about the material evolution, all our Shastras, they talk about the spiritual evolution, that the spirit from the lower to the higher, he is actually taking a journey. And this is from the infrasensient to the suprasensient. He has to go. And it is actually, though he is always pure, Purusha is always pure. He does not get contaminated. That's what Shankaracharya understood. And with that particular single thread of all the philosophy, he has given to us the Vivartavada. So he said everything is apparent. There cannot be absolute creation in the universe, absolute causation also in the universe. That's what exactly modern science also saying. Nowadays, Eddington, Edgerton, Max Planck, Heisenberg, only few names. So all these scientists have given to us, the great scientists of all times have given to us, that ultimately the matter, the source of matter, they are imperceivable and neither existent nor unexistent, etc. They have given to us that it is anirvachaniya. That's what Shankaracharya tells us. So finally, Shankaracharya is established as a great scientist. And Sankhya Darshana, that is a great pathway into that particular great world of a new experience. So I hope you will certainly read some of the best books on Sankhya and get to the philosophy of these great thinkers. Thank you all. Namaste.
Namaste, sir. I think this was a wonderful, wonderful exposition of the Sankhya philosophy. starting right from the basics and explaining all the aspects of the Sankhya Darshana. So you mentioned about the books. Could you recommend some books that could be used for the people to understand the basics of Sankhya?
Yeah. Sankhya, traditionally we have Sankhya Karika. It is available online. So I request all the participants to get Sankhya Karika in PDF form or whatever form. And there are beautiful translations and commentaries on that. And especially Vachaspati Mishra of the 9th or 10th century, he has commented on that Sankhya Karika. Sankhya Tattva Kaumudi is a very beautiful exposition of the Sankhya philosophy. And you have again Gaudapada Bhashya, a very short gloss on the Sankhya Karika. Apart from that, you have wonderful treatise on the Sankhya. That is recently our Chinmaya Vidyapitha only organized some of the lectures on that. Yukti Deepika, it organized my lectures on the Yukti Deepika. It's a very, very fantastic text on Sankhya philosophy, written on the lines of Mahabhashya. So Patanjali Mahabhashya, Shabar Bhashya, and you find this Yukti Deepika. So very beautiful. You will all enjoy that. And beautiful English translations are available. That will definitely take you into the intricacies of Sankhya philosophy.
Great, sir. So we have a lot of questions from the participants. I'll try to take a few of them at least with
Exactly,
you.
yeah.
So two of our listeners, Nandini and Gautam, they have asked, what is the reason you mentioned about Prakriti and Purusha in their original state? What is the reason for them to come together?
Yeah.
What is the motivation?
Yeah, Sankhya Karika, towards the end of the text, it says that it is Prakriti that gets closer to the Purusha, and that Prakriti itself. Prakriti means generally we understand nature, but that Prakriti, the force that disconnects itself. So it separates, it connects. So in this particular philosophy, we find the Purusha having no role at all in the process of creation. But the creation is not possible without the participation of the self. Therefore, Sankhya Darshana says, Prakriti Purusha Sanyogaha. So there is active participation of the Prakriti and passive participation of the self, and there is the combination, and the world experience is nothing but a product of their participation. And yeah, please, just one sentence, that they come together and the Prakriti goes on exerting influence on the Purusha through Ajnana, Avidya, it says. And when this ignorance is removed, then the separation, that means absence of influence of Prakriti on the Purusha, is Kaivalya or liberation. So in Sankhya philosophy, liberation is nothing but absence of influence of Prakriti on the self.
I think this is beautiful. So what you're saying is that the Purusha remains where it is. It is Prakriti who starts influencing the Purusha and starts the creation process. Beautiful.
Exactly.
And I think here, sir, also it reminds me of the first shloka of the Saundarya Lahari, right? Shiva
Shakya yukto yadi bhavati shaktah prabhavitum. Exactly. Yeah.
I think it's an exposition of that. Great. So you mentioned that from this Prakriti Purusha Samyoga, you have the gunas, and in Prakriti you mentioned that the three gunas are in balance.
Yeah.
In the Mahat and Ahankara also, are they in balance?
No, as long as there is balance, there cannot be creation in the form of modification. So we understand from the Sankhya philosophy that Prakriti alone is the state of equilibrium. And from Mahat onward, because Mahat is the name given to the first disturbance in the creation, in the equilibrium. So therefore, there is no state of equilibrium in the Mahat and Ahamkara. So that's why there appears a spatial and temporal limitation. There is a limitation.
And so if you say there is no equilibrium, is it like dominant with any one guna?
Exactly. So initially, when a particular guna dominates, there is inequilibrium, and as a result, there is the modification. And the first modification should be intellect. that is just awareness, then a kind of physical and psychological limitation in the form of ego. So this should have, I don't know exactly, but this should be taking place even in the mother's womb. So a kind of awareness and then limitation. So this manner we understand. So in Mahat and Ahankara also, we have the dominance of a particular guna.
And sir, when you speak about this evolution, is it safe to assume that the dominance would be starting from sattva in the beginning and then slowly moving to rajas and tamas in the later evolution, or is it we cannot say that?
Yeah, the problem is, I also face the problem because for the initial vibration in the prakriti, that means in order to create something, there should be the rajoguna dominant. So without that, there cannot be any action at all, activity. So rajas being responsible for all activity, so rajas portion is there, but not dominant. So sattva, as you said, sattva is more, but with little rajoguna. And after the ahankara, you find in the ahankara, when the rajoguna is more dominant, then you find on one side the tanmatra, on the other side the sense organs. Yeah, initially it was there, but not dominant.
Understood.
Yeah.
Sir, we also mentioned about Mahat being the collective ego and Ahankara become the individual ego. So
Exactly.
this collective and individual ego, is it of the collective Purusha and individual Purusha?
Exactly. Exactly. These are actually the limitations that the collective Purusha, that means in other darshanas, you find it as Hiranyagarbha, Mahat, Virat, etc. So that is actually the collective intellect. There is no division, further division. But later, when Ahankara was the modification in the form of Ahankara took place, then only there was some division. So all division starts with Ahankara.
Understood. And now, sir, we mentioned also about the Trigunas in
Yeah,
everybody.
exactly.
Now, are the Trigunas when a child is born, is the Triguna in the child the ratio determined? And can an individual exercise his own free will to modify this ratio of gunas over his lifetime?
Yeah, it's actually, if it is, if everything is determined, then Shastra will not be of any use. That is the problem. But Shastra tells us the same Sankhya Darshana, Advaita Darshana, whatever Darshana you take, the path may be long, but all the Darshanas tell us you have something in your hand, you apply your intellect, and you put all your efforts and elevate yourself. So that's what exactly the Darshanas tell us. So therefore, I suppose that uh, from the point of view of matter, everything is determined, but spiritually, something is in our hand that we can elevate.
Understood. There's another participant, Nandini, who's asked, is there a concept of punya and papa in the Sankhya Darshana?
Exactly. It says the Prakriti functions in 8 forms. In 8 forms, dharma, adharma, ajnana, jnana, vairagya, avairagya, aishwarya, anaishwarya. So just to separate the jnana, put jnana on one side, all the 7 on the other side. Among the 7, you have dharma, adharma. These are nothing but the causes of punya and papa. So when we do dharma, the result is punya. When we do adharma, the result is papa. And all these actually lead us to the bondage, and jnana alone takes us to liberation.
Understood. So there is another participant, Dr. Ria, who's asked, how is the Sankhya Darshana different from the Sankhya Yoga of the Bhagavad Gita?
Yeah, slightly different, because though all the darshanas draw the prime material from the Sankhya Darshana, at some places they naturally hold their own view. So the Sankhya of Kapila Maharshi in the Bhagavata, the Sankhya of Sri Krishna in the Bhagavad Gita, so they are slightly different from the Sankhya of Kapila. And especially, as 18th century Narayan Tirtha says in one of his commentaries, he says, Swatantra Satyatva Sukham Pradhane Chidbhedam Abheda Vakyaihi Vyaso Nirachashta Na Bhavanakhyam. So in the Brahma Sutra, second adhyaya, first pada, you have third sutra, etena yoga pratyuktaha. So he has refuted the yoga philosophy because he has refuted Sankhya philosophy. But people question, why Vyasa Maharshi has to refute? Because Kapila Maharshi has given us the Sankhya. He says there, we don't refute the Sankhya philosophy of Kapilacharya, but other teachers have taken into different direction. The problem is the Sankhya, which lays the theory that there is an independent Prakriti. It is Sukhamaya. That means the Prakriti possessing Sukha, Ananda, is not possible. Anandamaya Adhikarana of the Brahma Sutra, the sixth Adhikarana, that actually refutes Anandamayo Bhyasat Vikara Shabdan Netiche Na Prachuryat. So all the Brahma Sutra also tell us that Ananda is only in the Brahman, not in the Prakriti. So these matters matter. So therefore, they differ from each other.
And the other beautiful thing, sir, you said is you mentioned about moksha or liberation, where the Purusha becomes again disassociated with the Prakriti, you know. But still, I think the difference in Sankhya and then the Vedanta is that Sankhya still believes that Prakriti is still there, existent.
Yeah.
It cannot become non-existent.
Exactly.
But later on in the Advaita Vedanta and other things, we speak about only Brahman being Satya.
Yeah, this is exactly, as you said, the Purusha is dissociated, you said. But it is not in terms of spatial dissociation or temporal. Space and time, they don't matter. That's why it is only the influence that ceases to exist. And again, the matter exists for others. Even Shankaracharya believes in that. A person gets realization, to him there is no matter influence, but others are in the clutches of that Prakriti, under the influence of Prakriti. This is what exactly Patanjali Maharshi says in the Yoga Sutra, Kritartham prati nashtamapi tad anashtam, tad anyasadharanatvat. So that matter is common to others. A Kritartha realized soul may not feel the matter. He is in deep meditation or kaivalya. So this is the idea.
True. And also the other beautiful thing, sir, is that even when the later Granthas on Advaita Vedanta, they have to explain about the evolution and then finally come to Brahman, they have to take the help of Sankhya.
True.
Explain all these trigunas and everything, correct?
Yeah, because in our tradition, the Nyaya Darshana, it believes in 4 types of theories: Sarvatantra, Pratitantra, Adhikarana, Abhyupagama. So it says temporarily we accept something. So it is only temporarily accepted. And this is Sarvatantra. Like if a person says all men are mortal, so it is a Sarvatantra Siddhanta. Nobody can contradict that. So Sarvatantra Siddhanta. And they don't believe the Prakriti is real, etc. They don't believe. Yeah.
And also just one point that came to my mind, sir, I think many times the Sankhyas are referred to as Vriddhas also, right?
Yeah.
The old opponents.
Yeah, exactly.
So there's another question from participants Shivaram and Shambhunath Mandal. They've asked, the cosmology that we saw in Sankhya, is it reflected in other darshanas? Also, cosmology have they spoken about, or in the Vedas is the cosmology spoken about?
Yeah, the problem is the Brahma Sutra, the second adhyaya, first chapter says, Itaresham chanupalabdhe. It says the Mahat, Ahankara and Tanmatra, this process is not explained in the Vedas, Upanishads. It says only Shvetashvatar Upanishad is there, which actually comes closer to the Sankhya philosophy. So therefore, we do not find the same kind of exposition in the Veda, but few stray references may be found in the Upanishads also. And second thing is the Kashmira Shaiva Darshana in the category of Ashuddha Adhva, it gives this entire process of creation of Sankhya. So in the Shiva Drushti also you find this, in the Tantra Lok also you find that. So Shuddhadhva, Shuddha Shuddha, Ashuddha. So the Shiva, the Shaiva philosophers believe that from Prakriti to Mahabhuta, everything is Ashuddha. So they have taken this. Advaita also has taken this. So much of this Sankhya philosophy has been taken by the other thinkers, but they have tried to go beyond what Sankhya has given to us.
And also, sir, the other thing also that struck me is, and this is also asked by one participant, Devanand, that in the Bhagavad Gita, when the Lord says, Traigunya Vishaya Veda, and Nistraigunya, so he's bringing the
Bhavarjuna.
concept of Triguna in the Vedas.
True.
I think it's related somewhere.
Yes, exactly. That's why this actually lays emphasis on realization. Therefore, it says Nirdvandvo Nitya Sattvasto Niryogakshema Atmavan. This is actually the uh, the uh, Upadesha given to us. The message of this entire Bhagavad Gita is this. And Sankhya Yoga, in the Bhagavad Gita, you find both Sankhya and Yoga, because the yoga is entirely based on the Sankhya philosophy. So all the major theories are taken from the Sankhya and added. So you can say that it is a kind of elaboration of the Sankhya philosophy, laying more stress on the mental world, the mind, the modifications of mind, mind control, Ashtanga Yoga. So this Yoga Darshan, this has actually emanated from the Sankhya Darshan. That's why in the Bhagavad Gita also you find a shloka, Sankhya Yoga Prudhak Balaha Pravadanti, na Panditaha. So, yat Sankhya prapyate yogairapi gamyate. So, Sankhyancha Yogancha, that's one.
And sir, the term Sankhya is related to Sankhya, many people say.
Yes, exactly.
Evolution.
So the word Sankhya has two meanings. Sankhya on one side, number. So because this particular darshan gives importance to the categories, the number Chaturvimshati, Panchavimshati, Tattvajnaha, etc., it is known as Sankhya, Sankhya. And the Samkhya word, Samkhya, Kya means knowledge. Sam means together or unified or a collective, or you can say a very cohesive or holistic. So it is nothing but real knowledge, Samkhya. So it is real knowledge, Viveka Jnana, Viveka Khyati. So because Sankhya Yoga give importance to the Viveka Khyati, they are known as Sankhya. This is another explanation.
Beautiful. And I think one last question, sir.
Yeah.
Vishalakshi has asked this. You mentioned about all the gunas, they are all interdependent, they all create one another. So there is Anyonya Bhava between the gunas. So is there a concept of Shuddha Sattva or Shuddha Rajas or Shuddha Tamas? Because when you talk about the later Vedanta, they talk about Shuddha Sattva Swarupa.
Yes, yes. Yeah, it is there. Even in the Sankhya philosophy, we come across such terms. Shuddha Sattva, if you take Shuddhata as devoid of other, not possible. Shuddha is actually the major portion of that is Shuddha. And other two are dormant. That's what our Yoga Sutra also says. Prasupta Tanu Vichinna Udarana. So it is a Prasupta Avastha. Then there is the Udara Avastha. So between these two, there are other Avastha also. Therefore, Sattva, if the portion of Rajas and Tamas is less, insignificant, then you say Shuddha Sattva. Yeah.
Great. I think, sir, the questions are just pouring in. Maybe we'll have to take it offline. And
I appreciate their curiosity and really love for knowledge. Great.
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Thank you, sir. Thanks a lot for this wonderful enlightening lecture. I would now invite Mahulikar ma'am to say a few words.
I thank all the participants again. Dhanyavadaha.
Thank you, Dr. Penna. It was such an amazing exposition on Sankhya and your scholarship, your erudition in Sankhya, Yoga, Mimamsa, Vedanta. It's all on the tip of your tongue. We are really floored by your exposition and by your Vinaya. Thank you so much. I'm just addressing a few of the questions and the queries in the chat box yesterday. There were some questions like Nyaya Kandali, and these are books, these are certain books which are not available now, but I just searched, and in Internet Archive, Nyaya Kandali is available for free download. So you can just visit archive.org and download the text. Similarly, the Upaskara Vritti, Shankara Mishra's, it is available on webdunia.com. And there was one query if there is in a Marathi book, because I referred to some English books yesterday, Hiriyanna's and Dasgupta's and Radhakrishnan's History of Philosophy. Yes, there is Bharatiya Tattvajnan by Srinivas Hari Dikshit. He retired from Rajaram College, Kolhapur, and he has compiled all the darshanas in Marathi. And that will be, I think, a very good book for the beginners. I think this is from my side, and I thank Professor Madhusudan Penna from the bottom of my heart, especially on this Guru Purnima day. It's a pleasure to listen to him always, and he has been an old friend of SIF and CVV, and we look forward to his participation and collaboration with us in many more events in future. And I thank him, and over to Subbu for the Shanti Mantra.
So, all listeners, thanks a lot for being there in this session today. I hope all of you enjoyed this. So, I hope we continue this journey on the Bharatiya Darshana Shastravali, and we end now with the Shanti Mantra. Asato ma sadgamaya tamaso ma jyotirgamaya mrityorma amritangamaya. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti.